Well, let me begin this morning by saying how blessed I feel to have been your substitute pastor over these past 3 months. An honor to stand in this pulpit where Anthony does such a wonderful job throughout the year. It was his enthusiasm, I must say, that brought me here, because his enthusiasm for the congregation and his high regard for you, the members, that is a contagious thing. I could sense the first time I spoke with him that something very special has been unfolding here, a renewal in the life of the congregation and such high hopes for what will come next. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you for your invitation to me to share in a very special time for your family and for the church. And I also am deeply grateful to the staff. Amber, you've just seen John and Max who are here today. And to all of you, thank you. You have received me into your midst. It has been a joy. My ongoing prayer for the congregation will be that you will continue to grow in your love for God and for one another, and in your desire to serve the wider community and to make a difference in the world. These are not easy times for the church, for any church, and that makes your faithfulness and your commitment to love one another, to love the neighbors, ever more precious. Because we live in an age where divisions have become hardened and have infiltrated even into the churches. Compromise has become a dirty word. Toleration is seen as a weakness. Even empathy, caring about how others might feel, has been called a vice by people with position and influence in our society. It is all about power, who gets to call the shots and to what end, who will be favored, who will be disfavored, who will receive the benefits of society, and who will be denied them. These are the very issues that are on the minds of those who join the Palm Sunday celebration. For them, there is an intoxicating mixture of anticipation and hope. The crowd, they shout Hosanna, an appeal familiar to everyone in Israel. It means help or save, I pray. Tired of being under the heel of Rome, they sense that a new day is coming. Salvation, surely it's at hand. Jesus, he is our King, they proclaim. The name Jesus, after all, is a clipped form of the name Joshua, better pronounced Yeshua, which means Yahweh saves, or God is our salvation. In the Old Testament, Joshua is a military leader, a conquering hero who gains for the people of Israel their home in the land of Canaan. Our Jesus is also called the Son of David. It's a title that points to another, even greater leader from Israel's past, a revered king who conquers opponents on the battlefield, unites the people of Israel, and expands his dominion. But already the Jewish leadership in Jerusalem has soured on the prospects of this prophet and rabbi from Galilee leading them to a new future. Like many others, they would be happy to see Rome defeated, but many of them are complicit in the uneasy status quo in which Rome rules the state and in which Jerusalem is generally left to manage its own affairs, particularly in matters of religion. Still, it must be said that with his unusual charisma and extraordinary ability to heal and preach, Jesus, he's won over many followers in a movement that continues to grow in momentum and fervor. And yet we know that the shouts of Hosanna on Palm Sunday will be replaced by calls to crucify him only days later. Early in the 20th century, a small group of Jewish scholars sought to examine the question of why Jesus, a Palestinian Jew of the first century, endures the rejection of many of his fellow Jews, particularly those priests and leaders in Jerusalem. Among these scholars, Claude Montefiore offers a blunt thesis. Jesus disappoints them, he writes. Jesus disappoints the ones who yearn for a mighty leader who will release them from the heavy hand of Rome. Joseph Klausner, another member of that group, a scholar and a Zionist politician in the early history of modern Israel, he offers the opinion that Jesus is handed over for crucifixion because he lacks the proper patriotic leanings. In his teachings, Jesus points to a future kingdom embracing all humanity, not simply a Jewish nation, and that is the reason he is rejected. The politics of crucifixion are complex. In a sham trial before the high priest, false testimony is brought forward, but the fix is already in. The high priest is determined that Jesus must be eliminated. But he is not the only judge who must weigh in. And this brings us to Pilate, for his verdict will decide the case. His name in Latin means armed with a spear. Spike might be a good modern equivalent. He seems to live up to this name. As governor of Judea, Pilate is responsible for all aspects of Roman administration of the province. And first of all, that means he is head of its judicial system, an authority that includes the power to execute criminals or enemies of the state. That authority he exercises liberally. We learn from various historical sources, including Philo of Alexandria, who describes, and I'm quoting here, his venality, his violence, his thefts, his assaults, his abusive behavior, his frequent executions of untried prisoners, and his endless savage ferocity. The temple leaders, they drag Jesus to Pilate's headquarters, but Pilate is not interested in adjudicating a religious dispute among these Jews. Take him and judge him yourself, he says, but they respond, we're not permitted to put anyone to death. Rome alone holds that power over its subject people. So Pilate, he seems genuinely perplexed as to why Jesus has been laid on his doorstep. Since the temple leaders, they keep shifting the nature of their charges. First, they make an empty indictment. If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over. Pilate asked Jesus, your people and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done? But Jesus, his answer only confuses Pilate even more. And it is confusing. It's confusing if you believe sovereignty and power are best exercised through domination and oppression. But Jesus, he dedicates himself to the power of God, God's love that stands against all human arrogance, all human pretension. My kingdom is not of this world, Jesus says. So you are a king, Pilate continues. And again, Jesus says, you say that I'm a king, for this I was born, and for this I came to the world, to testify to the truth. And in one of the most cynical rejoinders ever spoken, Pilate spits out another question, what is truth? Repeatedly, Pilate tries to release the prisoner. I find no case against him, he shouts, but the crowd that's gathered, urged on by their leaders, shouts back, crucify him. In Matthew's gospel, Pilate tries to wash his hands of the whole ordeal. Surprisingly, the early Coptic and Ethiopian churches, they number Pilate among their saints. And that's because he believes Jesus is innocent. And according to an ancient legend described in several non-biblical writings, Pilate would later become a Christian and a martyr. But these particular texts are deeply problematic. They are clearly anti-Semitic, for they take pains to place the responsibility for the death of Jesus upon the whole Jewish people, not upon a particular group of Jewish leaders who plot against him, nor the brutal Roman state and its functionary who actually orders the crucifixion of our Lord. Such are the political calculations among some in the ancient church as they move into and through the 2nd century. At that point, the church, largely Gentile, is much removed from its Jewish roots, while its hierarchy becomes enmeshed with the patronage system of Rome. We see this movement beginning even in John's account of Jesus' trial before Pilate. In Mark's gospel, written many decades earlier, the crowd cries out, "Crucify him." In the Gospel of John, it's the Jews. And sadly, that evil slur that together and through all generations the Jewish people must bear the guilt, it has persisted through the millennia with grave and devastating effect. For it is the power of Rome being brought to bear in this story, the empire and the emperor. The thing that keeps Pilate up at night is not how to get along with the Pharisees or the Sadducees or the temple priests, but how to hold on to his own position within the maw of imperial power, how to please the emperor and not risk losing his backing by insufficiently exercising control over a client state. Epictetus, the Roman philosopher and contemporary of the gospel writers, reports in his discourses that many people wish to be the friend of the emperor. They believe that will lead to riches and ease, freeing them from worries. But once a friend of Caesar, the anxiety only increases. For to be a friend of the emperor, that is to become a slave to his whims, and always to be at risk of provoking him, falling out of favor, or worse. The religious leaders, they present another charge against Jesus. He ought to die because he's claimed to be the Son of God. Well, the Roman governor could not care less about a charge of blasphemy against the God of Israel, but the emperors, Caesar, Augustus, and then his successors, they claim that title for themselves. They are the Son of God. Pilate, then, becomes much more interested in getting to the bottom of this case. Where are you from? He demands to know with a hint of fear in his voice, but Jesus makes no response. Do you refuse to speak? Do you know I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you? And next comes the crucial line from the lips of Jesus. You would have no power over me unless it had been given from above. There are those who lament how flawed and failed this trial seems to be, rushed as it is, bypassing any sort of due process. However, to deem it a mistake of judgment is to misunderstand fundamentally who is being judged and who is the judge. We see Pilate exposed in his venality and political opportunism and cowardice. And the Jewish leaders revealed to be shallow and self-interested and without mercy. And there is Jesus, the one actor who is truly free. You see, he chooses this path self-giving love. He's on his way to the cross, and there is no one who can stop him. Once again, Pilate tries to release Jesus, but the religious leaders, they have one more card to play. If you release this man, you are no friend of the emperor, they taunt, and the crowd begins again its foul taunt. Crucify him. So that's what it comes down to, an issue of sovereignty, of rule, of kingship. So how do we know who is truly our king, the one to follow, the one we must serve? It's not by bowing to the ones who sow division and fear, desperate men who will do anything to gain and hold power as they fabricate crises as a pretext for violence, blame others for problems, spread falsehoods, start wars that no one wants. The true king rules with love, offers peace, shows the way to freedom. The true king gives up power in order to empower others and lays aside riches so that all may have abundance. Our king gives his life so that we may have life eternally. And that's the story that we have to tell and not miss it by moving too quickly from this day of palms to the day of resurrection. There will be a wonderful celebration here at the church on Easter Sunday. But never forget what it takes to get from here to there.